Okay, hello and welcome. I'm Jason Gumpert from msdynamicsworld.com, and this is a session in our Fall 2014 BI and Reporting webcast series. Today, I am really pleased to be able to welcome Carrie Roswald. Carrie is a real Dynamics NAV community advocate. She's an NAV user working as a corporate controller for Augsburg Fortress Publishers, and she's also an advocate for getting the most out of NAV as a solution. You'll frequently see her writing about it on her blog and participating throughout the community. So as we get started, I just want to add that we do invite you to add your feedback and ask questions today during Carrie's presentation. You can use the Q&A block that you should see to the right of the slides, and Carrie will save time to answer those questions. So without further delay, please allow me to hand off the floor to Carrie.
Very good. Thanks so much, Jason. And thank you, everybody, for attending our webinar today. I always enjoy an opportunity to talk with people about account schedules because you can imagine that there may not be very many audiences for that topic. So let's talk about the context of today's webinar using what you already own for financial reporting. We really, in this particular webinar, want to explore the things that you already have in your system without any add-on solutions. So that's what we'll be covering today. I've just got a little bit of information here that I'll be happy to share with you about me, and I'll tell you a little bit about some of my experience with account schedules. I've been using account schedules for about 10 years now. I've been with my current company, Augsburg Fortress, for about 6 years now, almost 7, and I've used account schedules for all of our financial reporting there, and I had the opportunity to be with another company using NAV before them, and we used account schedules there. So when I first started using NAV with the first company, that was one of my big questions about NAV is, how in the world do you use all these account schedules? And I went looking for resources, and I talked with many other end users and lots of other controllers and lots of other CFOs to figure out what things they knew about account schedules and what their secrets were. So almost all of my information is OJT, on-the-job training. But I went into a lot of other resources like Customer Source, which is Microsoft's official site for where you can find the manual about NAV. So as long as you have your current licensing with your Microsoft partner, you should check there if you're looking for that information. But really, talking with other users who do the same job that I do or like it was the way that I learned about this. So I'm happy to answer emails about this topic at any time. I don't always get back to you right away. Sometimes it takes me a couple of days because I do have my full-time job. You can follow me on Twitter, and then I've got 2 other resources for you if you're a person who's looking for more information about account schedules. As Jason mentioned, I do have a blog, and the website is listed there. The primary topic of this blog is account schedules. And the reason that I created the blog in the first place was I had started to teach classes about account schedules about 4 or 5 years ago. And the #1 question I would get is, do you have a cheat sheet for the formulas? How do we do that? So what I did is I created a cheat sheet for the formulas, every single one I could think of that I use in account schedules, and I put it out there in a blog free for all of you to reference and to use. Since then, I've developed some additional series related to Account Schedules 101 and a guide to dimensions. And then there's also a new page out there in the last year giving account schedule examples. So that if you're looking for some examples for the design view of account schedules and the end user view together, so you can see how it all comes together, you can find those as well. So hopefully you'll find that an easy resource to get to. And then I'll just give a little plug for an event that is coming up in October. The NAV User Group Summit is coming up in October, in the middle of October in St. Louis, Missouri this year. And there is some pre-conference training, and I'll be doing 2 full-day classes on account schedules. So if you learn a little bit better in a classroom setting, we'll be doing a full 8-hour immersion hands-on exercise training, both in Classic on one day and in 2013 on another day. So if you're looking for a really deep dive, that is available through that pre-conference training. So let's talk a little bit about how you know whether you even have account schedules. Do you own account schedules with the suite that you have with your company? The licensing can get a little bit confusing if you're in a version that's prior to NAV 2013. So you do have account schedules and dimensions related to account schedules if you are on 2013 with the perpetual license, which most people in the newer versions will be. If you are in a pre-2013 version, you will have licensing for account schedules as well as dimensions as long as you have a Business Essentials license or an Advanced Management license. You have to check if you're in versions prior to 2013 where you have the Professional License Edition, because folks at this point had kind of an a la carte option with granules. So if you're in doubt, contact your partner. Give them a call and just say, hey, do I own this or not? If you find that you don't have them and you're on a Professional License Edition, you can still get them as an a la carte option as a granule. But the things that you want to ask for are the three that I have listed at the bottom of the slide there. You need the account schedule granule in order to use the financial reporting part of the software, but you'll also need basic dimensions and advanced dimensions if you're using dimensions. Now, if you haven't had those in place before, I'm just going to tell you, you should put them in place. You really want to be using dimensions and advanced dimensions. But if you're not using dimensions at all, you don't have to have them in order to use account schedules, but you sure want to. So that's the licensing portion there, so that you can figure out if you do have that or if you don't. I would say most people who have implemented in the last year, maybe 2 years, will have those. And people prior to that will have to check, depending on the license that you have for your package. So here's the deal with NAV and financial reporting. NAV allows choice, tons of choice. And a lot of folks who are new to NAV as a product are frustrated by that. I know that I have lots of folks who come to me and say, boy, I just don't understand why NAV does not have financial reporting that's out of the box, so that when I implement, I can just produce my balance sheet and my income statement and my statement of cash flows and just be ready. Why do I have to design it myself? And the answer I always, or the question that I bring back to them is, what part of your financial statements is exactly the same as another company? And the answer is never everything. You know, we've all had some kind of education with accounting in order to be able to produce our financial reporting. And there's all the textbook versions of balance sheets and income statements. But when we get into the working world where we need to produce those, every single company has something special that they want to be able to incorporate into their financial reporting. And it may be something just as simple as what it looks like, what your board wants, what your executive team might want, what you want to publish internally versus externally. And it also might be things related to your industry, where your industry does particular things with your financial statements, where you have to show some detail in order to make that financial statement meaningful. So NAV allows choice, and account schedules is one of those choices, but there's lots of other choices as well. And let's talk about some of those other choices here, because I always say that you've got to use the right tool for the right task. And I will tell you with surety, because I've done it for the last 10 years, account schedules is the right tool for financial reporting. But account schedules is not the right tool for lots of other types of reporting. One of the things that you should know about account schedules is it references what's posted on your general ledger. So it's going into the main portion of your software and referencing that, but it's not reporting against your submodules. So when you think about your sales module and you think about your purchasing and inventory modules, it's not accessing that information. It's accessing the information that comes from those modules. So if you want to do reporting where you want to, say, incorporate something like quantity, quantity is not a financial element that's reported to your general ledger. The dollars related to sales of items are what is on your general ledger. So when you get into some more operational reporting, account schedules is not always the first choice for that. There are some things, once you start using dimensions in a very robust way, that you can use account schedules for as far as operational reports, but remember, you're still going to get all of your values as dollars, as what's posting to your general ledger. So there are other things that you can use that will reach into those other areas so that you can produce those different types of reports. Some of the things that I have listed on the screen here are some of those options. And a few of them, like analysis reports and object designer, are other things that are within NAV that are there for the purposes of reaching into those other areas of the system. So take a look at those types of options that are also already in NAV as options for you for reporting. There are a few other things that I have tried all these different options, and they all have their pluses and minuses. Surely SSRS SQL is a fantastic option, a different product of the Microsoft stack, and something that we use in my company all the time for other types of reporting. One of the issues that a lot of companies have with SQL is you've got to have somebody who knows how to do SQL. So you've got to have somebody with that skill set in order to be able to produce those types of reports for you. And when you think about other things, things like Power Pivot, Power BI, Jet Express even, those particular products are Excel add-ins that integrate with NAV or allow us to use NAV information within Excel in order to produce different reporting. I'm seeing lots of people using Jet Express since that became a new product with NAV within the last 2 years, I think it is. It has its limitations because, as it's an Express version, there are only certain features that are incorporated for free. And of course, there's a Enterprise Edition that you can pay more for in order to get more features. Power Pivot and Power BI are probably the most underutilized of all the things on this list, and I think the thing that has the most potential going forward. So if you're thinking about what you need to do maybe for your professional development and new things you need to be learning in order to make yourself, your skill set improved for your financial reporting skills, I would say learn how to use Power Pivot. It's really a pretty amazing tool. And then, of course, the very last portion here is there's lots and lots of ISV solutions. Now, Jason mentioned at the very beginning of the session that this is the series on BI and reporting. I'll also point out that account schedules is really a financial reporting solution. It's not a business intelligence solution. It's not intended to give you beautiful dashboards with gorgeous graphics that are easily manipulatable by your end users. It's intended to give you accurate financial reporting that ties to your general ledger. Okay? If you're looking for a business intelligence solution, then you do want to look at some of those things that many of our ISV cohorts have provided for us, because there's some great options out there. But if you're looking for the right tool for the right job, and you're just trying to get your financial reporting accomplished, then account schedules is the right choice. So what do I use exactly? I said that I've tried a bunch of different things, and I sure have. I like to learn about new things, and I like to see if there's something that might be a better tool. So I've tried a bunch of different things, but this is really what my company has settled on as the right solution for us. We rely heavily on NAV account schedules for our financial reporting. We produce all of our basics as well as quite a few more advanced things using those account schedules, but part of the reason why we have been very successful with using account schedules with our financial reporting is because we do use dimensions in a very robust manner. So we've got 9 dimensions, and we have, I think, 5 of them are related to our inventory, to our items, and the other 4 are related to expense accounts. So based on those different dimensions, we get a really broad variety of reports because those dimensions are in place. And I would venture to guess, other than the very most basic high-level financial reports that we produce, almost every report that we produce has dimensions incorporated with it in one way or another. So I mentioned SQL. we did make the conscious decision a couple of years ago to change some of our reporting strategy. We were using a lot of canned NAV reports, and we were a little scattered because we had tried a bunch of different things and had 1 or 2 reports over here and 1 or 2 reports over there, and we wanted to get ready to upgrade. So we're moving to NAV 2013 R2. So when we evaluated what it was going to take to upgrade from 2009 Classic, which is where we are today, and to go to that next version and to take a bit of a jump over a couple versions in there, we said, what's that going to cost? And as we did the analysis of what it was going to cost, the number one thing that was going to cost us the most money was transforming those different reports from one version to the other. So we had somebody on staff who had been working with SQL and increasing his skill set on how exactly to do that. And he said, let me see how much I could do with some of this and see if it's possible for me to design all the things that we're using SQL, if I just learn a little bit more about it. And sure enough, he did. He did a fantastic job. And now as a strategy, starting about a year before we even began our upgrade process, we said no more reporting in any other way unless it's financial reporting for account schedules, but any other types of reports we're going to design in SQL. So that's been a great option for us, and it's been the right tool for the job. The final thing that I have listed on here is SharePoint. Now, we don't use this as a reporting option, but we sure do use it as a delivery option. So everything that we produce has to be able to be distributed to our employees through SharePoint. And we have quite a few different vehicles for that. Some of them are just simple document libraries. Some of them are push notifications. Some of them are dashboards based off of the information that we're pulling out of there. And we do share all of our account schedules with direct link from SharePoint. So we're using SharePoint in a very aggressive way in order to give our end users one place to go to get their reports. So that's our strategy and how we've built that over the years. Now, let's talk a little bit more in detail about why specifically you should use account schedules. I've touched on a few things here. Most importantly, the idea that you can build your financial statements custom. So you can make them however you want. I know that one of the things that I also hear often is, gosh, my business has changed and I need to do something else with this and somebody else built my account schedules. Can you show me how to change it? Of course. You can change your financials to keep up with what's going on with your business at any time with account schedules. And really, as a regular maintenance item, you should be looking at your reports at the end of the year to see, are you still utilizing them? Are there people who are still looking at those reports on a regular basis? Are they still useful for your company? Are they still relevant? Do you have old information that maybe is not populating with any numbers anymore? So keeping up with the idea that you can change your financials at the end of the year at any time. Also keep up with the idea that you can maintain those account schedules in order to make sure that your financial reporting is always relevant. So a few other benefits of account schedules that I really enjoy as a controller are some of the other things that we have on this slide. Certainly, the direct tie to the general ledger is hugely important. Maybe not to everybody else in the organization who might not understand how important that is, but this is how you get your end users to have full trust in your reporting, where they believe that it's right. I can't tell you how many times in the past where we have tried other products that don't have a direct tie to the general ledger. And it's not because the product is bad. It's usually user error in designing the reports. Okay, think about that for just a second. All of these other reporting packages, you often have to write queries or different formulas and things to ask a certain question in order to get the result. In order to get the right result, the result that actually ties to your general ledger, you have to ask the exact right question. And that's hugely important. With account schedules, it's a pretty direct thing. You're interfacing with dates and dimensions and account numbers. So it's really difficult to misstep when you're building the account schedule. And since you can always compare that back to your canned trial balance, it's very difficult to make a mistake when creating an account schedule as far as tying. Now, That direct tie to the general ledger actually makes account schedules even more valuable in tandem with other reporting. So I mentioned we use SQL for lots of stuff. I use my account schedules to verify a lot of the reports that we produce in SQL just to make sure that we've asked the right questions when we've designed those other reports. And it's been a great way for us to learn together, the IT department and the finance department, exactly how we should be asking those questions and what information we need to include so that when those things are designed, they're designed correctly the first time. And it never makes our end users question the validity of our reporting. So we really trust what's coming out in our reporting because of that. So certainly integration to budgets is important. Since my company is a not-for-profit company, we really rely on budgets for our guidance on exactly what's going on with our company throughout the year, and our budgets are fully integrated into account schedules. And we don't budget at the level of all of our dimensions, but we do for quite a few. For some of them, it wouldn't make sense. It would be much too much work to be budgeting at a very low level, like say the item level. So we don't get that deep, but we do get pretty in-depth with the budget integration so that we can constantly measure how our actual is doing against what we planned to do. So certainly the dimension filtering with account schedules is an important feature. If you're going to have all those dimensions, you need to be able to view the reporting by all the different measures that you're looking at. And the account schedules make it very easy to just flip between those things really quickly and see what the difference is. And then the drill down feature is something that I actually use on a daily basis, I would say. So since we do use account schedules for more than our monthly financial reporting, where we look at different schedules for different reasons, I use them for answering questions a lot of the time, and the drill down feature, it allows me to do that. So we might take a look at our daily sales report, and we would say, according to our budget, we thought that we were going to sell this many of this book. We're a publisher by now, and it's really low. So what's happened? I could drill down into the values and see if I find something that's maybe booked in the wrong place, or to view what the plan was, see if maybe something came through in a different time period than we expected. And of course, on the other side, if something comes through really high, make sure that that's in the right place. So I can drill down into account schedules. So from my financial reporting view, I can drill down all the way to the transaction or list of transactions that created those higher level numbers and see whether those journal entries or invoices or credit memos or whatever it was, how they all come together to create that number. So it's an invaluable tool for me for daily management with my company. So the other thing that I really like about account schedules is I can export it to Microsoft Excel very easily. The design, no matter what version of NAV that you're using, allows you to create the account schedules that you have in Microsoft Excel through a simple export function and through a bunch of different techniques that you can use. You can create formatting up front that you keep and only update the numbers every month. So a little bit of design work needs to be done on the front, and you can get as fancy as you like when you're putting it into Excel, including using things like indicator buttons and scales and all these different types of things that can make it look just a little bit better. And the very last thing that I love about account schedules more than anything else is I really can, as a financial controller, build it without help from IT. And to me, that's hugely important. My IT staff, while they're absolutely on board with the strategy, with what we're doing, they don't have time to help me with that kind of stuff. And I'm not always working on things when they're available. So if I'm working on my month-end close and it's a little later in the evening than the rest of the folks at the office, I don't want to have to wait until morning to resolve what I need changed or bug somebody during off hours to help me out. This is something that I can learn, and I can build my account schedules on my own and learn how to flex with those and create new and interesting things that might be useful to my end users all on my very own. So here's the basics with what you should be building with your account schedules. Okay, this is our textbook financial statements. So surely If we're using account schedules, hopefully we have all of these different things. And yes, I absolutely do list the statement of cash flows. I know a lot of people stay away from that and do not have that included in their list of must-haves because they produce it in Excel. Take the time to be able to design the statement of cash flows because you really should be able to click and produce those numbers every month, and it is possible. So I want to talk about some other ways of how you can use account schedules, and just so that you can have some ideas of what you can do beyond the basic financial statements. So let's go through some of these and talk through the details of what we can do with account schedules other than those base financial statements. So, and I'll give you some specific examples other than the brief things that are listed here. Gross margin. So I mentioned earlier that one of the most important things for us is our item detail. When we think about our dimensions, out of the 9 dimensions that we have available, 5 of them are related to our items. So we are looking at gross margin not only at a high level, but also a very detailed level, and for a lot of different purposes. So if I think about the highest level dimension related to items that we have, it's product group category. So very high level where it's things like Bibles and Sunday school programs and confirmation. And we want to be able to see how these different groups of products are performing for margin, and we do budget at that level, and year over year it's really important for us to see how those things are tracking. If we think about how else we can look at gross margin though, sometimes we need to get all the way down to the item level, and we have a dimension that is at the item level that allows us to be able to track and correct minute errors because we're using account schedules to track that. So if you imagine with me, if you will, the cost of goods sold section of your income statement and think about all of the accounts that are involved there, what kind of things happen in there? We have, of course, the product cost of sales that we track, but we also have things like write-offs. And on the sales side, we have returns and discounts. So all those things that are related to the sales and cost of an item, we want to track at the item level so that if something goes wrong, we can easily track down all the places in the system where that's occurred and do a journal entry in order to correct them. And especially if that's something that we don't catch in the correct fiscal period, we really want to be able to track that down even in prior periods to decide exactly how we want to correct that type of thing from happening. So think about that from a very high level, from a tracking standpoint, and from a very detailed level, from an accuracy and consistency standpoint. We're using account schedules in 2 ways for the gross margin, but then also think about what you might also look at other than items from the gross margin standpoint. You might just be looking for a simple walkthrough of gross to net. So if you want to see how all of those different accounts are coming through, maybe what percentages they are in relation to the total, you might want to do something like what I have listed in number 2, where you want to list a general ledger account in the columns instead of in the rows. Now, this is a common misconception about account schedules, that you're not able to report on general ledger accounts in the columns. Now, it is true that you cannot put general ledger accounts in the columns in account schedules, but what you can do is you can put them in the rows, and when you put them into Excel, instead of using the export function, copy and paste the information. So copy it out of account schedules, making sure all of the columns are showing that you want to copy. And when you paste it into Excel, use paste special with the transpose option so that you can put general ledger accounts in the columns and other things like dimension detail in the rows. It makes for a much prettier report. So think again about that gross margin walkthrough where we want to go gross to net, and maybe we have I don't know, 5 or 10 accounts that we want to show, and maybe we have lots of dimensions that we want to show. So maybe we want to show a whole bunch of products against that walkthrough. If you put those general ledger accounts in the rows instead of in the columns, you'd have a really ugly report. It would be really skinny and long, left to right. So if you design it according to the limitation with general ledger accounts in the rows and say your dimensions in the columns and use that transpose option with Excel, suddenly you've got a much more valuable report. So you've had to use a little Excel trick in order to do that, but you're getting the information you need, with the only penalty to you being that you've got to do that copy and paste instead of an export function. So just a more creative way to use something like that. So other things that I can do with account schedules is really answer very specific questions. And again, this leans really heavily on our use of dimensions, but I'll tell you a story about a specific question that we were able to solve with an account schedule. A couple of years back, my end users came and said, gosh, we love the reporting that we get that tells us what our expenses were by team and all the different things that we have by product groupings. But what we really want to see is we want to see what we spend by activity in our company. So since we're a publishing company, we want to see what do we spend on copywriting, and what do we spend on proofreading, and what do we spend on cover art. And we want to be able to see what we spent on those different activities, not just for the one product that we're working on, but across the company for all products, or for all projects, and for all teams, because we want to be able to see if it makes sense for us to be outsourcing those functions, or if we should be hiring somebody to come in and do that for us on staff. So we thought about it for a little while, and we implemented, we already had a project number, so each of our books has a project number so we can track the cost related to that, but we added a dimension for activity. Once we added that dimension and had tracked it for a while, we were able to get some fantastic reporting out of account schedules based on our general ledger data, based on the expenses that we had, that informed us a lot better about whether we should be paying for outside help for those activities or whether it would make more sense for us to hire somebody to do that for us. So that's just an example of some specific questions that you can answer with that. Another example would be, I would say a few years back, the most frequent question I got was, Carrie, how much money do I have left on my budget to spend on whatever? So my end users could see what they had spent and what they planned to spend, but they really didn't have a good idea for how much they had planned overall or what was left. And that was really the big important question to them, what was left. So we were able to use account schedules to list for us in the majority of the end user level reports that they looked at. We could see for their team what happened so far, what was the spend to date, what was the budget for that same time period, but then more importantly, how much did they plan for the whole year, and then what was remaining. And we incorporated that data into a lot of those reports, even the one with the activities. So they could see, okay, so if I spent this much on proofreading for this project, and all of these departments spent this much on proofreading for this project, what's our total budget for the year for proofreading? So you can see how we could get very specific about those different types of questions just by thinking about what our business need was and figuring out how we could tie that to the data in our system. And in some cases, we had to institute an additional dimension in order to get that data. But all of that information, we were able to use account schedules to get to it. So let's switch tracks a little bit from some of that specific stuff and get a little more general. One of the functions that I need to do every year is to run the annual audit for the company. And the auditors have lots of different questions, and of course the majority of those things we can answer with account schedules. We don't choose to answer all of the things that they need for audit with account schedules. Some things go a little bit deeper. Let's say when we need to substantiate our returns reserve, we use SQL for that because we just need to be able to get into more detailed information about what quantities of things have moved during which time periods in order to justify that reserve. So that's an example of where account schedules isn't the right tool. But where account schedules is the right tool is when I put together some lead schedules for our auditors. A lead schedule allows you to be able to look at the balance of your different accounts at the end of this year versus the balance at the end of last year and group those things into logical account groupings. So I might look at all of my cash accounts in one grouping and all of my current assets in another grouping and fixed assets in a different grouping and maybe investments in another grouping. So think about how you would categorize not only your balance sheet but also your income statement, just to make those like accounts appear together and make it easier to absorb. In particular, what are the auditors looking for? The auditors, among many other things, are looking for variances. They're looking for trends. They're looking for behavior differences. So why did this thing happen so much differently this year than the prior year? That lead schedule makes them be able to drill into that information much easier. And it also helps me to justify what's happening because they're not drilling into that one account where they're just laser focused on that. There's context built around it because I have those other groups of accounts that are near it, and that really helps for me to be able to justify what's going on and explain what's happening with the financials in a lot faster way. And of course, what's my goal with the auditors is to get them out of the office as soon as they can so they're not billing me a whole ton of hours for the audit. So the lead schedule is something that helps with that. Consolidated financials, you sure can produce account schedules for consolidated companies. So I have a company in the US and a company in Canada, and I have a third company that's set up in NAV that's a consolidation company. And between those three different companies that are set up, I produce a consolidated financial statement. And because I was lucky enough to be the person who set my system up, my general ledger accounts and dimensions are the same between all of those three, and my financial reporting is the same between all those three. So that makes it very easy for me to do that, but it doesn't have to be. If you didn't have that choice, maybe you had an acquisition that came along later, maybe you're just in transition on something, or maybe somebody else set up your system that you're using. You sure can set up consolidated financial settings with account schedules where the chart of accounts and things are different and just map to each other. But if you can, set up those account schedules so that when you get that consolidated view, you can see it in the way that you need your financials to be for all of those different setups. So a couple of other examples that you might not think that you would use account schedules for. So what time period do we produce our financial statements in? We usually produce it monthly, sometimes for things annually, but you can produce account schedules at the daily level. So when we look at our sales reports, we want to see what's happening every day. And you can set up different formula options out there so that you can see what's happening every day of the month, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and going forward. We look at this at quite a bit of detail, going back to those product group categories, so daily sales by product group categories, but maybe we've got some hot new items that have just released this year, and we want to see what the daily sales have been on those items, because we've got those dimensions set up on a one-to-one relationship with those items. We're able to see what the daily sales are on those individual items through our account schedules, and we can see what the dollars are for the sales that are happening. Think about the power of what that's like. Even if you go back to the idea of what we do with our gross margin, if we've got some hot new items, or we're really monitoring them because they've just been released and we want to see what's going on, we could see on a daily basis what's going on with discounts and returns on those items on a daily basis. So some great tools through account schedules to be able to monitor what's going on with new releases for our company. And then on the other end of the time spectrum, think about looking at many years at a time. If you've been on your system for more than a few years, maybe, and of course I'm thinking about budgeting right now because we're starting to work on our end of year budget for 2015, you're going to want to look at many years at a time so that you can see trends. I've been on the system that we have now for almost 6 years, so we've got great data from a long enough span of time, so we can really bring our reporting out to a much longer time frame to see what's going on other than at this moment in time or today or this month or this year. We can go back many years at a time using account schedules to compare what's happening with those different things. I did mention budgets. So we do use budgets within NAV, which are not a real robust tool. Basically, they're just a receptacle for you to put your budget information in so you can report against it. I'm a big fan of them because it does receive the information really well, but I'm not a big fan of them because there's not much else to it from there. So I don't even go into my budget section of NAV anymore other than once a year. So once we've got our final budget ready, we can put the information into NAV, and then at any time during the year, I've got that designed into account schedules so that I can see exactly what the plan is from where I'm sitting every day. Because I'm in account schedules looking at those daily sales and the gross margin and looking to answer specific questions anytime. But I can flip over in a different view of account schedules and see the budgets that we've set up, so I can see what the actual was versus plan. So a great way to be able to save yourself some clicks and just stay in one area of the application. So the other way that we can use account schedules that I don't see a whole lot of, but I'm seeing a little bit more of, is looking at ratios. So what kind of ratios are you looking at with your business when you're thinking about performance? You might be looking at different percentages. What's your base or your percentage compared to base? What are your inventory turns? What's your receivables ratios? So all of those things, because where's that information coming from? It's coming from your general ledger. You can calculate that in your account schedules. So account schedules isn't going to do a whole lot of complicated math for you, but it will do very simple math for you. And of course, calculating ratios works just great as long as you're referencing the correct accounts. So the last thing that I'll talk about here with using account schedules is you can accomplish simple queries. So originally, I never thought about using account schedules as the query tool. I was always spending time going into the chart of accounts and going into the actual transactions, dumping some stuff into Excel, filtering it, trying to figure out exactly what kind of information I could gather. And I know that one of the challenges that people have with NAV is a lot of times we've got too much information, where it's just an overload of information. And you really can use account schedules to do simple queries and see exactly where those numbers are coming from. Remember that drill down feature that we're able to use, where we can look at a high level number and we can drill down into that in order to be able to see the transactions that made up that high level number. Think about how you can use that drill down feature in order to ask simple queries. So maybe if I just wanted to look at the results of a project, and I wanted to look at it over a number of years, but I didn't have a report designed for that because I look at my projects every month or year to date, and I didn't have something designed for multiple years. I could really quick go into account schedules and make a very quick row setup, pair it with one of my existing column layouts, maybe that many years at a time column layout, and suddenly I've got a query where I can drill into the transactions that made up last year's costs for that project and the year before. So I'm able to use account schedules as a simple query tool even if I don't have a report that's designed for it already. So I do see that we've got a question from one of our attendees asking about, will we see examples of the reports today? Unfortunately, with just a 1 hour time period, we don't have enough time to see examples of those reports. But there are tons of examples of these exact same reports that I'm talking about that are out on my blog. So, and if you look at the address is dynamicsnavfinancials.com, and there's just a menu up at the top that's called Account Schedule Examples. So many of the examples that I've talked about today in our 10 ways to use account schedules other than the financial statements are out there on the blog if you want to see them. And that includes the design view as well as the end user view, because it's often difficult to envision both of them together. So that's the account schedules 10 ways. Hopefully that has given you some ideas about how you can be using account schedules beyond just financial reporting. And as you probably notice, a lot of that depends very heavily on use of dimensions. But I would say also it depends on how expansive you can be with your thinking about financial reporting. Think about what you can report on that goes back to your general ledger, and you'll be able to get some really amazing results with some of these different things. I'll open this up to some other questions. And let's see, I see one question here about getting the slides. I do believe that this is being recorded by MS Dynamics World, so you can sure review the recording, which will have the slides incorporated in there. All right, I'm looking for some other questions. I'll open it up. If you can type your questions into the Q&A window here, I'm happy to answer any additional questions that you have over what we've gone over so far today.
Jerry, we have a question that I just saw in the chat. It asks, is account scheduling a standard in NAV 2009 R2?
Yes, it is standard as long as you have it with your licensing. Think back to the slide that we had at the beginning of the session. It really depends on what licensing you had. So if you had the professional license edition, account schedules is an a la carte item. So, and it's likely that you would have had it with that version with NAV 2009. So check with your partner. If you happen to get Business Essentials or Advanced Management, which were both license options for pre-2013 versions, you might already have it. But if you didn't, it came as an a la carte granule. And the things that you'll want to ask for are the account schedules granule, and then also if you're using dimensions, the basic and advanced dimensions granule. Why did they take away the ability to show negative numbers in parentheses? Yeah, I know. It's not everybody's favorite feature. As long as you're putting your stuff into Excel, then you're in charge of what format it shows in. But if you are printing account schedules out of NAV directly, they're not real pretty, and you don't have much of an opportunity to make changes unless you do have that changed by your partner. You can have any of those standard reports changed by your partner, but I would say if you have the ability to be able to produce your financial reporting by exporting it into Excel, do that, because you get a lot more flexibility with how nice you can make it look. Other questions?
Well, why don't we make a last call here, and I'm not seeing any others, Carrie, but we can, so maybe we'll start to wrap up and see if any final questions come in before we close things out here. Let's start, Carrie. I just want to say thanks for taking the time to present to us today and share all this knowledge about account schedules and NAV.
You're welcome.
Thanks to everyone who attended. We had a really nice turnout, and we really appreciate you taking the time to spend with us. We are recording today's session. We'll be making it available on demand, and we'll be sending out an email alerting you when that is available. We posted a few links in the chat area that you can grab if you want to. Account schedule examples, Carrie's upcoming training before the NAVOG Summit, and also just a link to her blog. So feel free to check those out. And we will end it there. I don't see any other questions in the queue, so thanks and have a great day.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, everyone.